All right, so welcome everyone. I think this is one of the more anticipated sessions that many of you have been looking forward to. Our training session for Imagino, dedicated for the ESEP markets. Okay, so today in the call, you will see that we have a lot of different people. We have people from regional marketing, from trade marketing, as well as the CRM community. So a very broad range of people who is going to be making use of the platform. And I believe that everyone I've invited here should already have access to Imagino. So yeah, okay. So let's go through the agenda for the day. So what I'll do is I will touch on a little bit of introduction on what the platform can do, how to navigate around the platform, a little bit of some rules in terms of, what you should be doing, what you should avoid doing, and things like that. And then after that, we will talk about the content library. So that will be, how do you build your EDMs, how do you build your creatives, and following that session, actually the trade leads can actually drop off if you feel like you want to. Otherwise, you can also stay. But we will then after that cover things like segmentations, campaign setup, as well as activations. So all of those are more relevant to the CRM community. Okay. I think since we are kind of like we're having half of the group here dropping off early, what I'll do is I'll keep the session open in terms of Q&As. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and yeah, just ask live. Okay, so this is a very casual session. Oh, I see Hui already has a question.
No, sorry. Typo.
Okay. All right. So let's kickstart. You will see that I have already shared my screen for the Imagino login page. So for those of you who already have access, when you click on the first page, you'll probably see this. So what I'll do is I'll kind of show you how to log in. So it's a little bit different from a lot of platforms out there. So you have to press the SSO sign in, and you have to use your Hepta email login, right? So not your full email, only the Hepta version. So once you click on this, it will okay for me it's already logged in because I logged in earlier today, but usually your first login for the day you will have to sign in with your Microsoft password. So it's very standard, like when you log into your PC and all, it should be the same password. Okay, so just very quickly going through the modules, you should see the same thing that I'm also seeing. You will see that we have a workspace. We only have one workspace for the whole of Asia. Then we have this module for customers, which inside you will see that there's a lot of data points. I will very briefly go through it. Because most of us wouldn't use this module. Then we have the campaign module, which we will spend a lot more time on because it has things like your segmentations, your content, activations, campaigns, and journeys, right? I think these are the modules you will spend all your time on. And then the last one we have is the catalog. So really this is just a summary of all the data points that is available on Imagino. But it's very technical. Sometimes even I get lost looking at it because there's like pages like this where how all our data tables are connected. But you don't have to worry about this. Okay. So maybe let's start with customers first. Within the customers module, they have a lot of sub modules as well. So you have clients and prospects. So the client and prospects is actually a data table where you have a master list of all your customer data, right? You'll see here that the city they're from, their names, their I think their birthdays and all of that. I normally use this only to very quickly filter down to specific users. If I need to validate certain things like their loyalty status or to see what was their most recent bookings and things like that. But I believe for trade side, you guys probably won't use this as much. I won't really touch on the others. They are very technical, and they're also just the other data tables, which you will see more practically later when I start building segments. I think one thing I want to highlight for the CRM community is that we have the lead scoring here. So I think in the past, lead scoring was a bit more manual, but with the evolution into Imagino, all of that lead scoring tables are actually directly imported here. So you can actually use this as dynamic elements. And that's actually one of the use cases that we are planning to roll out for a few markets later on. Okay, so moving on to campaign, you will see that in campaign, there is this drop down for all projects. So you will see, I'm just going to scroll down here. These are all the, I would say, folders that you have access to. I think pretty much everyone has the same level of access. You will be able to see that we have an ESET common for both CRM and trade, and every market is then segmented into CRM and trade. So just be mindful whenever you are creating anything or you're duplicating anything, you make sure that you're in your own project so that you don't accidentally remove someone else's campaigns or creatives and things like that. Yeah, so we've already named them appropriately. If you are on a MacBook, you'll probably see like country flags as well. Okay, so let me just cover the top few sub-modules. So we have segmentation. So this is where you build your audience targeting. This is more for email deployment as well as SMS. We then have content library. So this is pretty much where you are building templates, your different email content blocks, your footers, your headers, and whatnot. All of them will fall here. We have activations. So activations is what we use to push or export the customer data onto like CSV files, Excel sheets, and things like that. I will touch on this later as well. This is the last part. Then moving on to campaigns. So this is where you set up your SMS campaigns, your EDM campaigns, and all of that. And then journeys is kind of like a more advanced version of campaigns where you can stitch multiple campaigns together, multiple triggers together, multiple channels together. So this, I won't touch on it today. I think today let's focus on the basics. And then this will be a use case that we built within ESAP in S2. Okay, so just before I start on the content portion, I just wanted to highlight that we have a training session Asia project. So if you want to do any tests, I encourage you to save the file here rather than in your own folders, simply because there is no way to create subfolders in Imagino. So the list of campaigns, the list of your content may look very messy. So if you have a lot of test items, it may look overwhelming. So if you have anything that you want to test, just put it in the training session. Okay, so today I will also be creating a lot of the demos there. So, okay, I'm in training. So then going into content. So, okay, first part of my session for content is I want to show you some of the templates that on our end we have built and we are continuing to populate. So going to ESAP Common CRM. So these are some of the templates that we have created. If I show you in cards, you will see that we have like this thing called a result highlight. We have some image and text layouts, different email templates as well, a header, and then of course like things like the all-inclusive things, which I've been working with a few markets like Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, to kind of migrate some of the older templates from D'Artagnan to be made available here. So you'll see that all of these are here, and we're continuing to populate this as time goes on. Okay, I believe trade also has some assets already. Yeah. So these are being added as well. Yeah. So if you need anything, you can always start with looking through these folders. Okay, so let's go into the demo. So in terms of content demo, I'm kind of going to break it into two parts. One to focus on how do you build a content block, and that's going to be built here. And then how do you build a full email? And I'll show that a little bit differently, because as I explain later, you will realize that certain settings are only available on different modules. Okay, so let's start with building a content block, right? So very simple, you just create a content fragment, and then you just name it. So for today, I'll call it training April. Okay, the ID automatically generates. This is optional. You don't have to choose a source. So this is basically like the data tables that are available to us, and it allows you to add dynamic elements. Okay, but just to start off, you don't have to choose it. You can either choose a HTML, which means you have to write the whole template in HTML codes, or a simpler drag and drop. Okay. And then we also have the category for the type of content fragment you want to save. So you'll see that there are a few options. I would recommend using freeform pretty much all the time. So because freeform allows you to very easily just, pull and stitch it together with different templates. If you chose a template, what will happen is that it is a full template that you have very little flexibility in terms of changing certain elements of the full email. Um, Header and footer, I think is very straightforward, and then menu is typically your bottom buttons with your social elements, your WhatsApp, your Facebook, Instagram, and whatnot. Okay, but for the most part, we use freeform. Okay, and then if you want to enable dynamic or personalized information, you can enable this. But for today, I won't touch on that. We'll just keep it simple first. Okay, so you save your content fragment definition. And you'll see here that there's nothing yet. It says here switch to ready. So currently it's in draft. So what happens is that if you're building a content fragment, the whole purpose is for you to be able to reuse this block in future emails, right? In order for that to be visible whenever you're pulling it in the future, you need to make sure that it is ready. Okay. So for today, I'll leave it in draft. And to start, you use the right box to create a content fragment. Okay. And you'll see that it's not entirely too different from the old platform. It does simplify a lot of the widgets or the blocks that you see on the left here. There's a lot less settings up front. So it's fairly easy in terms of do you want to add a structure for a single column, two columns, three columns, and so on. So it's as simple as dragging and dropping it there. You have a three-column panel already, right? So if you want to add content, then it's just as simple as, putting an image there. So, so if I wanted to, let's say, create something with an image on top and text in the middle, I can very easily do that. And you can also move things around by, hovering over and clicking this. Then you can kind of just move it on top, move it at the bottom, duplicate it, or delete it like that. Okay. So let's start by creating maybe just a simple image and text. Just because this is a content block, I'll show you what it looks like when you're building a full email later. Okay. So we go with our standard font, so that's Times New Roman. Please let me know if I'm going too fast, but let's just say this is summer holidays. Okay. And then I click on image and I want to add an image. I just realized I didn't open oh, I think I did. Yes. So let's just take this image as an example. And I'm going to copy the link, the hosting link. I'm going to park it here. Okay, yeah. So you'll see that it has been added. Oh, I chose an image with a rounded edge already. So what you will typically see is that it doesn't automatically crop the edges. Maybe I'll find another example for that. Uh, okay, maybe this one. So if you want to replace, it's very easy. Copy. Okay, so you'll see that it's not rounded. Natively within the platform, it's not possible to kind of crop the corners like that. There isn't any buttons here that will allow you to do that. So we did find a simple fix in terms of doing this. And it actually requires us to kind of just copy the HTML. Now bear with me, this will look very complicated, but if you are using any of the pre-existing content blocks that we have already developed, they've all been embedded. So you don't have to change anything. And what I mean by that is I'm just going to replace this with an extra string of quotes, and you will see that the edges are now rounded. Okay, and what happens is that if I chose any other image, let's say I chose this one, share, and then the image also will get cropped automatically. Like the edges will still be rounded because it's been hard-coded into the HTML to ensure that that is implemented. Okay. Yeah. So then we can add more subtext if you need it. So for this, typically we use Verdana. Let's say size 14. And then, yeah, you can just write whatever you need to write. I don't have a placeholder now, but it's all as easy as that. You can just drag and drop. If you need to add a spacer, all of that is very straightforward. For the spacer, typically it comes out in with the line, so you can just kind of like remove the line here. So there are quite a lot of functions. Frankly, it shouldn't be all too different from D'Artagnan. All your alignment, the height, the width, and all of that should be here, responsive adjustments and things like that. If let's say you have a specific image or a text element that you don't want to show on maybe desktop or mobile, you can as easily just select, let's say this image, I only want it to show for mobile, then I hide it on desktop. So little icon here will show. Okay. Yeah, similarly on text. So all your text editing tools up here, your font size, font types, your styling, bold, italics, underlines, and whatnot. And then all the other things. So there are some duplicated information, like the alignment is also on the left here. Of course, you can change your text colors. Unfortunately, it doesn't save your hex codes. So you do have to have that ready on the side. So it's just easier to copy and paste. Yeah, you can change your line spacing and all of that. So fairly straightforward. Okay. So far, I don't think I've seen any questions. So that's good. Okay. So let's say this is something that you are happy with. Click on save. One thing I need to highlight is that don't just close the tab. It does not save the file. You need to click on save regularly because it does not save if you don't click that button. Okay, so just like that, you already have a content fragment. And if I go back, so up here you'll see that I can go back, and if I turn it to ready, you'll be able to pull this content later on when we're building the full email. Okay. So let me now quickly just move on to building a full email. I'm gonna pause for a moment to see if anyone has any questions. No? Okay. Okay, then I will start to create a campaign. So for the trade leads here in the call today, I am creating this as a campaign because there are certain formatting elements, like for example, your mobile font formatting, that only works properly when you are creating it as a campaign. I know you don't typically launch your email campaigns you won't be doing it from Imagino, you have a different platform. So no worries, you can still export the HTML directly from here. We just need to build it using a different module. Okay, so creating a campaign, you start with standard campaign, and of course we just name it. Okay, for the CRM community, you guys need to use the GMDT's naming conventions. I will touch on that later in the dedicated module for this. Okay, but just for this demonstration on creating the assets, I'm just going to call it training 28 April. Okay. Then you choose, if you're just creating an email template, just choose email, and just keep it as marketing. Okay, configuration. Bear in mind that anything that you do in this platform, if you press live, it actually goes live. So be mindful to avoid choosing immediate. If anything, just choose one time so that it's safer because it won't trigger a campaign until you actually set a schedule for when you want it to launch. So always choose one time if you're only using it to create assets. You can skip the segmentation part, that's not important for creating any assets. So I will just kind of create the campaign first. You'll see that it gives you warning because you can't launch a campaign without segments. Okay. So let's create an email. And there are many options, right? You can choose from a file. So this is like typically you have a zip file, you can upload the HTML here, that works too, but you won't be able to edit the designs unless you change the HTML code itself. Similarly, you can also copy and paste HTML, but I think for most of us, we would use drag and drop or from a template. Okay, so I just want to demonstrate to you, if I click on drag and drop, it creates a very base template for you. So you'll see that it looks like this. It is a little bit messy if you want to start from a plain canvas, like you have to go one by one and delete every single item. Does seem like a lot of work. So if I go back and I choose from template, what I've done is, under CRM Commons, ESAP Common CRM, I already have a empty template. So it's literally a blank slate like this. So that you can, when you start with literally nothing, which is easy to work on. Okay, so let's build a template using some of the content blocks that on regional site we've also created, and I will also pull from some of the other markets just to demonstrate that you can also pull and share content across different markets. Okay, so in order for you to use an existing content fragment, you have to use this DAM, and then you just drag and drop there, and then you click on it. Okay, so make sure the workspace is Asia, and then you're choosing the correct project or correct folder. So let's say we need a header, right? If I go to the CRM folder, I think this is the one. Okay, so you will see that I have I already imported the logos on top. Then what is next is maybe I want to pull the one that we just created earlier. I think that's in training. There we go, this one. Okay, so then it pulls that automatically. And then you really want to keep adding a lot of other content pieces. So for example, I want this one. Okay. One thing we learned along the way as we were, experimenting with the platform is, originally we had to create multiple layers of text for different devices, but we have found a way to avoid using that. So all of this will be cleaned up in the final template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the duplicated versions first and restore the setting to just show on all devices. Okay. So to make matters easier for everyone, whenever you are using a regional content block or a fragment, you will see that we have like a placeholder here with the dimensions. So this is something that we've identified as what works best in terms of the placement, so that you can just very quickly, maybe if you need to do cropping outside of the platform, you can do that using these dimensions and then upload it to Dream Storage and then porting it in here with just by pasting the image path. Okay. Oh, is there a question? Let's see. Okay, Farah has a question. I have a question regarding importing HTML directly on Imagino. Is it possible that we can use existing template? Yes, that is possible, but you cannot edit the layout. So you won't be able to see what I'm currently seeing. You will just see this bottom panel, and you'll need to be able to edit this, which is frankly not very user-friendly. So unfortunately, we have to rebuild many of the templates by hand as a drag and drop format. Okay, but not to worry. That is something that on regionals, and we are also. So I'm going market to market to figure out what are your most commonly used templates to then rebuild them here, so that it's easier for you to start using the platform. Okay. Okay, so I think I've kind of added quite a few items already, and let's say I want to add a little bit more. Maybe I need to add like the call out. So I'll just show you how to look at other markets. So if I, let's say, look at Singapore, oh, sorry, no, I think it's Malaysia, CRM, and I like this one, right? The all-inclusive sun panel. I can just pull it here, and then now maybe I need a footer. So let's say this global version of the footer. I think for trade, you may have different templates for footers. This one is more for the CRM teams. Okay. There is a lot of duplicates here. So let me just very quickly clean this up. Okay. So you'll see that right now we already have your logo on top, your hero image with the main headline with your main copy, and then you have different elements that you want to highlight, and then of course like a call out to all inclusive at the bottom, and then your footer, right? So of course every country may have different footers and slightly different elements, but all of them are very customizable. So one thing that I need to highlight here is that your unsubscribe link in the past with D'Artagnan, you had to write HTML to ensure that it is a dynamic element. So for this, it's actually a lot easier. You just highlight the unsubscribe button, and then you choose from this link here, the drop down, unsubscribe link, and it already pre-generates it inside, so you don't have to write any codes. Similarly, for the online version or the what we call the mirror link, highlight the same thing, click on link, and then look for mirror page link, and it will automatically generate this. Okay, so let's say this is the final email and I'm good with it. I'm going to save and exit. And then we have to preview it on mobile. And you will see that, for example, so you will notice that you cannot actually edit this on mobile from the edit panel. In order to make this optimized, you have to, unfortunately, go into edit, make the changes, come out here and preview it on mobile. And you will see, and I now notice that, oh, Summer Holidays is too small. If I look on desktop, it's actually much bigger. This needs to be adjusted. Maybe some of the text can be a little bit smaller and things like that. Okay. So what you need to do is you go back to edit mode. And now I want to talk about the appearance tab on the top right here. So this is where all your settings are enabled. And these are settings that, as I mentioned earlier, there are certain things that you cannot do from the content library section. You can only do it from the campaign side. And actually, this is what I'm talking about, right? So your message width on D'Artagnan, we were actually using 700 pixels. Imagino actually recommends nothing greater than 600. However, we do feel, and we've done various tests, that 700 is actually better. So you can't, unfortunately, you can't also click on this here. You have to kind of click here until you have 700. And what it does is it automatically scales all your assets or all your fragments to the right dimensions. So one thing that you should avoid doing is changing this first and then adding your fragments. Because if you add your fragments later, and maybe I should demonstrate this now, it will look a little funny. Let's say I choose something from here. Maybe I'll choose this one again so you have something to compare. And you will see that there is this huge gap in between versus what was scaled earlier. It's not really an issue. You can kind of just scale it down to 600 and then up again. It will fix the problem, but it's a little bit more steps. So I would recommend making sure that you have your overall template layout ready before you scale your message width. Okay. Oops. You can change other things like, the paddings all around, changing background color if that's what you prefer, or if that's what your market typically uses, your fonts as well. So this will apply to pretty much everything that we see here. Okay. So one thing to take away is that any settings that you apply under appearance actually overrides the settings that you apply on the content fragment section. Okay, line spacing. So I think all of these are fairly straightforward. So then moving into so we have the header. So you want your header to have a certain size, or all your contents and all of that. So even like headings, for example, if you're making like your H1, maybe if this is a, for example, in HTML, if this is a heading 1, you want to make sure that your heading 1 maybe is large. Oh, it didn't change, but it should override in the live one. Okay. Hang on. Coming back here, then also button settings. So if you have CTA buttons, you can customize it to be a bit more interactive where you can have highlighted hover buttons. So for example, when you hover over it, it changes color. So that is things that you can actually play around with in here, changing the text style and all of that. Okay. And last part, and I think this is the most important part, is mobile formatting. So we do need to ensure that some of the text sizes is actually smaller so that it appears and renders more accurately in your actual email, right? So content, maybe, I want to pull it down to 14 and things like that. Maybe in mobile, they should all be, where is it? Center align. Let's see. So you'll see that just now, summer holidays on desktop was fine, but mobile is very small. But because I adjusted it on mobile, it actually looks bigger now. So this is only something you can do within the campaign module. Okay. Yeah, and all the because I duplicated the thing, so that's why you see so many of it. Yeah. But generally, this is kind of how you build it. And now for the trade team, I believe you guys need to export it as HTML. So if you go back into edit content, you have this little button on top here for HTML codes. You click on that. And it's as simple as selecting everything and copying it out. So you can copy and then you paste it onto your platform. But so this was something that Hong Kong also realized recently, where when they copy this directly, it ends up with a very, very odd formatting, where it doesn't render. Maybe some of the button placements look odd, the text doesn't look the same as what you're seeing here on Imagino. So that was a little bit of an issue. So we have found a workaround. And I don't expect you to remember this now, but do reach out to the team if you have further questions. So then we can actually walk you through exactly what steps to do. But in summary, what needs to be done is this whole string of codes needs to be copied onto, I think it's Pardot, pasted there. And then coming back into Imagino, you click on this button on the right, CSS. You copy everything here, okay? And going back into Pardot, you will see that what you pasted earlier after title here and before this part, basically you need to enter a line here and copy all of this and paste it inside here. I don't know if I've lost anyone, but don't worry. Please come and ask the regional team if you have questions on this, on how to do it. That's something that we can guide you on. Okay, so once that is implemented, it actually makes everything in the preview look very accurate and pretty much as accurate as what you will see in the preview here. Okay, Kara has a question on official fonts. Technically, they have custom fonts in the platform, but we don't recommend using custom fonts because they don't render correctly on other email services. So typically for emails, we use web standard fonts. I think that's the correct term that they use. So those are things like, Arial, Verdana, things that come default in your PC. Okay. All right. So I think that is all that I wanted to touch on when it comes to creating an email. So if anyone has questions here, please let me know. Otherwise, then I can release the trade teams because I will go into other topics right now. Everything okay? Okay. So next, I will talk about segmentations, campaigns, as well as activations. So this can get a little bit technical for the CRM team. So yes, please let me know if you have questions along the way. So I'm going to just quickly save this so that we can come back to it if we ever need it. Okay. So let's talk about segmentations first. So I'm kind of like backtracking a little bit because the workflow for creating an email and exporting the email was, frankly, not the most user friendly, not the most intuitive. But that's something that we figured out works best. Okay, so if we backtrack to segmentations, this is where you build your target audiences, right? Um, So you will see under training, I have quite a few, but if I go into ESAP Common CRM, you will see that there is already a lot that we have created on a regional level, and it's in the midst of being localized to different markets. So if I come in here, into my naming conventions, you will see that, actually, no, wait, let me show you regional segmentation. You will see that these are all the segments that we have created so far. So things like general segments for prospects and clients, for only clients, clients for SMS, prospects only, and then all the different type of booking segmentations, whether it is for all resorts, sun resorts, snow resorts, so on and so forth. Your loyalty tiers, your household segmentations, and then maybe some more recent and relevant booking segments as well. We then also have an exclusion which was supplied by the Japan team, so that was a very good reference for me to build this very extensive exclusion. So it's basically excluding prospects that were created in the last 15 days, clients who are 45 days before their stay, as well as 20 days after their stay, and have recently booked in the last 15 days. So it's quite a lot of rules inside. And this is typically what we use for excluding in certain campaigns. So I leave that to you if you want to activate this exclusion or not, but it's available for you. We have other options as well, but I think for the last one, I don't think I created it. It looks new. Yeah. So maybe what I want to show you also is, the segmentation naming conventions builder. So in order for you to have a cleaner view, because if you notice in here, there is no way to put it in folders. I have to unfortunately type things like, prospects, prospect, and search it. So the naming conventions are very important, which is why then this builder has been created. So you can always come into this document and then fill it up at the bottom. So you can just type that. Let's say if your market is, you can write your market. Maybe I will use Korea as an example, and then we use your locale. Is this a client audience or is it a prospect audience? Typically, we use NA only if it's very generic and it either covers both or doesn't cover any at all. So let's say it's for client, and then your segmentation type, it could be maybe a booking, or it could be profile, or actually this is supposed to be a drop down. I think maybe it doesn't work properly in the browser. Yeah. So typically we only have a few. We have like generic, booking, loyalty, and profile. And then in the last column here, you can kind of just type whatever you want to describe it. Is this for SMS? Is this for email? How are you segmenting it and things like that? Okay. So the final output will then show here. You can just copy this and park it as your segmentation name. Okay. So coming back to the training session, maybe what I'll do is I'll demonstrate how to create a segment. So creating a segment is very simple. Maybe what I will do is I've actually created this before already. So it is a winter 27 all resorts. Okay, so I've pre-filled and I'm just copying the full name and putting it here. So it will generate the ID and then you go to source. The source I would recommend everyone to use is clients and prospects because it has more data columns that are relevant for your dynamic elements. So for example, first name and last name. Typically, if you pull bookings, some of those useful information is not available. And I will show you how to kind of connect the data sources to pull out relevant booking data. Okay, so you should default to clients and prospects, move to filter. So in filter, this is where you choose your parameters to say, this is who I want to segment, this is how I want to filter out different people, right? And I have a list of, I would say, mandatory filters that you should be implementing. It doesn't matter which market you are or what campaign you're doing. Typically, you should be following these three basic filters. And what they are is number one, opt-in. Of course, if it's a service email, you don't have to use opt-in. You can just use, you don't even have to use this filter. But typically, if you're pushing this for any promotions, it should always include opt-in. So opt-in email, oops, you will see there's opt-in email, there's messaging, and all of the different things. So email is for your EDMs, messaging is for your SMS. So if I choose email, make sure that opt-in is true. Okay, that's the first filter. The second filter is client number. And it just needs to say it's not empty. This is only if you're targeting people who are existing clients. If they are prospects, then it's fine. You don't have to include this specific criteria. But this really just filters out items that have blanks in our database. Then geographical country code. Now this one was a little bit complex even for me to figure out, because you can't Google these answers. So every market has their own unique geographical code. And if you really need, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with this, but I mean, I was quite new to it. So I kind of recorded all of this down. So let's say I take Japan and I put it here. So your geographical country code equals to 206. So that means I'm only filtering people within Japan's database. And I think this is also a good example because for some markets, you have multiple locales, different languages. You can then add locale to, for example, in Japan, they have Japanese, right? And I only want to segment this for Japanese GMs. Okay, so this is the base filter. Maybe what I will show you is, maybe I'll just preview this for you. Okay, so if you move to the next step, it asks you, in your preview, what columns do you want to see? Frankly, I don't adjust any of this. I will just go ahead and create a segment. And this is what the page looks like once you are done with the segmentation. You can view your filter to see, oh, this is what I created. If you want to edit it, there's an edit segmentation button right on top. And if you want to validate your data, you go into preview. It usually loads really quickly. And I use this to just double check if I filtered to the correct country, to the correct locale. So earlier we made sure that it was Japan. So if I look at locale, I should only see Japanese GMs here. And that is true. And I also filtered to only the Japanese language. So you will see that here. Okay. Unfortunately, in the preview, even though there's probably like thousands of lines here, it only previews, I think, maybe the top 50 lines. So do be wary of that as well. Okay, so from this, I know that I've pretty much filtered it fairly accurately in terms of which locale, which country that I want to look for, right? So the next part is now, I earlier said that one of the example now I'm using is people who have booked in for winter 27, right? So how do you add booking data? Okay, this is kind of where it gets a little bit tricky, but just stay with me. And I'm sure, in the future, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out as well. Okay, so in order to add booking data, you will need to, let me just remove this line. You will need to add what they call an inline aggregate. So you click on additional actions and then inline aggregate. So this one, maybe I want to call winter 26 bookings. And then this is where you connect to the different data table. So what it does is that it uses client number, which is available in client and prospects data table, and connects it to find that same user or that same GM in the bookings data table. So I chose that. I leave the aggregate as count. And the first thing that you always want to do when it comes to booking related data is you have to make sure that the booking is validated. Otherwise, it will also include cancellations or changes and things like that. So first thing you should always do is resource status. It should always equals to V or validated. Yeah. And then now we want to filter to the season, right? Winter 27. So what we can do is period code. So this is a Club Med thing. You will see that there's E and there's H. So E, I think you should note this down somewhere. E is for summer season and H is for winter season. Okay. So what we need to do is 27H. Okay, and if you want to do further segmentations, like I only want to look at Japan resorts, right? Or maybe just mountain resorts. You can type product line, and then either mountain. There are different sun here, so you should actually not use equals but use contain if you want to include sun. But let's say it's mountain, then you can kind of add the inline aggregate. And how this filter is done is it needs to count something. So it should be greater than 0. Okay, let's preview the data and see if there's anything. Yes. So if I look at, this may not be the most accurate way because they may be staying even before winter 27, but basically everyone here in this list has made a booking for winter 27. Of course, you will still see that for summer 26, they still have stays. Maybe they're returning again at a later point. Okay. Any questions on this so far? Okay, I think all's good. All right, so I've talked about, your base filters as well as the inline aggregate for bookings. I think what I'll do is I'll include this information somewhere, maybe in my working sheet, just so that everyone has a reference to what we should be using to make sure that we are filtering to the correct audiences. So the last step of creating a segment is typically to count. So once you have done your preview and made sure that it's accurate, you click on count. Give it like 5 seconds. And a number should appear here. So that means that based on the filters that I have created, there are 490 items here. You can always go back, make the changes and count again, and that number will change as well. Okay, and it will actually record. So every time you make any changes, it will record it as a different line item. So if I, let's say, change, I took out this locale. So it means I'm targeting English speakers as well. And I count again. So it actually records it twice so that you can see the differences. Okay, yeah, so expected to be bigger. So if you have any advanced segmentations, I know it can be a little bit overwhelming. So it's something that you can always reach out to me if you need any support to build those segments. Okay, so that is segmentations done. And this will actually tie in very much to when you're setting up your campaign. And that is actually my next topic. Okay, so coming back to the training campaign that we created earlier, I think maybe, you know what, maybe I will create a new one just so it's easier to follow. Okay. CRM. Okay. Email campaign. There's no attachments and the purpose is for marketing. Okay, so we go to configuration. The same rules apply. You should try to use one time as a safeguard because you can always schedule it to go live in 30 minutes, in 1 hour, and so on. You could also maybe, so right now, maybe I'll just quickly walk through the different configurations. So immediate is when you click on launch, it goes live. One time is as it says out of the box, and it will get triggered whenever you set that specific schedule. Recurring will be, it may recur, it may trigger on a daily basis and things like that. So that it depends it depends on what kind of campaigns that you want to activate. Event trigger is based on any action that consumers are doing. It could be things like trigger based on bookings and stuff like that. But I think for the most part, I think everyone is probably using at the very least one time. Okay. The last item is journey. And this is not something I'm going to cover today because this is very, very advanced. And this is something that Regional is scoping to roll out in S2 for more advanced integrations. Like, for example, if someone maybe receives the first EDM, they don't do anything to it, they don't click into it, they don't open the email, they don't click through any link and things like that, we can trigger an SMS follow-up campaign, or a WhatsApp campaign if once that is actually integrated. So all of that can be done using Journeys, because Journeys is for multi-channel deployment. Okay. So we move on to segmentations. One thing to note is that you won't be able to find segments that are not inside this project. So you will see here that I think the winter 27 item. Oh, actually, I think I can find it. Okay. It didn't work earlier, but let's see. Oh, I might have saved it in here actually. Maybe that's why. Because if I'm not mistaken, you won't be able to find segments that are outside of this project. So in any case, I'm just going to choose some random ones. We're not going to launch a campaign, so then create the campaign first. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It will say that there are a lot of errors because you're not complete with anything yet. You can then create your email. So this comes back to the topic that I was talking about earlier, building it from your content blocks, or if you have a full template ready that you've already built in your content library, you can kind of import it here as well, right? So I am just going to very quickly build something simple. Oh, yes. My header, then let me do this, and the footer. Okay, so ignore the duplicates. I think this one we need to clean it up in the master template later on. Okay, so let's just save this, and then you can kind of preview it. Yeah, the fonts are a little bit big because I didn't adjust any of the settings under appearance here. But I assume that if you are actually doing this, they will look a lot cleaner than what you're seeing here, right? So I'm very quickly just going to go through this because we've already talked about this section of the email. But what I want to focus on now is your settings, right? This is the identity that you are going out with your EDMs. So there's already a default, so just choose a default item for the email address. In terms of the sender name, this is customizable. You can put Club Med, you can put Club Med Australia, and what you have, whatever you prefer. Reply to can also be like this, for example. Okay, and then the subject line. So the subject line, I think this is something that is also available in all the other platforms. You can type whatever you want, but you can also inject a dynamic element here. So for example, if you want to call out, I think you've probably seen some newsletter where it says, it actually mentions your name, right? So you can actually do something like, I add a variable and put first name. You don't have to code it. It does all the coding for you. So you add variable and it actually pulls this out for you. So it says, hi, whose name, book your next stay. Okay, for example. Okay, I'm just going to copy this. I'm just going to put it here as well for the preview text. And then UTM parameters. From what I understand on acoustic, it was 100% automated. With Imagino, there is some additional steps that you need to do, but GMDT has actually proposed a simpler way to do it, and I'll walk you through this in a bit. Okay, so what I want to focus on first is the test profile. So for the markets that have already updated your list in the sheet, you will see that if you click on import test group, these are the ones that have already been created. So since I put that this is from Australia, then I'll just kind of choose specific here. And then it's as simple as pressing import group, and it pulls all your names earlier. So it makes it very easy to vet, like for every campaign, it makes it very easy to just just add people again, rather than recreate the profiles over and over. Okay, so if you have dynamic elements inside the email, if you click on, let's say, any of the email names, the dynamic element will change to that person's name, whether if you have a configuration for first name, last name, or if on top you had like their GM status, their loyalty status, that will also be reflected. Of course, because we're testing it with people who are internal, we don't have loyalty status. It's always going to be empty. So be mindful of things like that. But if you notice, you see it actually changes here. I suppose in the system, maybe the call center, when they filled it up, like it's a little bit inaccurate. Let's check. Oh, actually, I think this might actually not be the case. This is probably being masked, but it's actually dynamic. Let's see if mine is there. Yes. I don't know why I have a middle name, but that's probably because of when it was set up for me, that's just how they did it. Okay, in any case, now that that is done, let's talk about the UTM parameters. So, I do want to backtrack a little bit. I realized I didn't cover naming conventions, but I think for many of you who are, you're very used to working with acoustic, your naming conventions for the campaign does not change. Keep what you have been using, and GMDT has this builder, if you didn't know already, to build the naming conventions, right? Okay. What I want to focus on is the UTM tracking, because this is an additional step that you didn't have to do on acoustic. So there is this link that I will share with you later, and this is actually a link available in the reading materials, the training materials as well, for tracking Imagino campaigns. So it's very straightforward. It just shows you step by step. This is what you need to do to make sure that all your URLs are UTM tracked, right? So first, get into your campaign. We are already there, and then click on the edit icon. I believe we're already inside, and then it says here edit email content. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so while that loads, we look at the rest of the information. So it then says open the code, copy all the codes. Okay, copy all the codes, and then go to this tool, which is actually this tab that I've already pre-opened. So you just need to paste the code here, and then paste the code, and then click on this button called Track My URLs. And what it does is GMDT has built a code to kind of inject the tracking elements directly into HTML, and then you copy it out and paste it back into Imagino. That's really all you need to do. So let me show you what that looks like. And okay, I'm going to click on HTML codes here. So copy everything. You come here into the tool and just paste it. Okay, and then you track my URL. So it has detected certain URLs, and then what you need to do is copy the modified HTML, go back into Imagino, and replace it. So select everything and then Control V just to replace it. Okay, so in this manner, all of your links are already tracked. Okay, and honestly, that's all you need to do in terms of tracking. So save content. It didn't save my earlier progress. Okay, I'm just gonna quickly do this. Okay, yeah. Okay, so save. And then, yeah, so all the parameters are checked. The test profiles are also here. So if you need to trigger, you can also trigger it from here. Like I mentioned earlier, we can set the scheduling. So that's something that you can edit here. And then the next part is your audience. So earlier you chose it, but you can still make adjustments to it. So if you click on the edit button here, you can change the segments if you want to. you can also add pressure rules or exclusion rules. Earlier, I mentioned that we have that very extensive list of exclusions for people who have recently booked, people who are new prospects and things like that. So if you add exclusion rule, that has already been created and it's available here. So you just need to click on it and add the rule. So then it gets applied or attached to this campaign. Okay, so you can save the audience. Yeah, and it's all saved. It will show you here. And then you also want to add your seat list, right? So since this example is for Pacific, I will also add here, and it's the same list of people. So there is a difference between seat list and test groups or test profiles. The test profiles are more for testing the emails that you are building before you launch your campaigns. Seed list is more for when you launch your campaigns, when everything goes live, you are also then in a way, I would say you are CC'd in all of the in the emails that go out. So this only happens when you launch anything live. Okay, because there are chances that you are probably not part of that segment. So then it's good to include yourself. Okay, and honestly, that's all that you need to know for launching a campaign. If so, the last part is then setting up your schedule, and then you can launch it from there. If this is what you call a like a immediate launch, there's literally a button here that says like go live or something like that. So be mindful with that. Okay, Um, so I think the next part of the campaign is to look at how your campaign has been delivering and how has it been performing, right? Currently, so Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia have already started running campaigns on Imagino. So maybe what I'll quickly do is I will show you what I've seen for Singapore. So an ongoing campaign here. Okay, so this glitch happens sometimes when you click on it, the URL on top changes, but nothing happens. So you just need to kind of just refresh the page. Okay, so this is so once your campaign has started running, you'll be able to see this kind of information as well. How many emails have been delivered, you know, the bounces, your open rates, your click rates, and all of that. Yeah, and then of course which email domains is being delivered to, and yeah, all the breakdowns of the different data points. Okay. Um, yeah, so there's even a heat map or a click map. Yeah, there's just a lot of information here, like, you know, the exact logs of who it has been sent to and things like that, you can also track. Okay, so that wraps up campaign. I have one last module to talk about, which is activations, and then maybe I'll take questions after that, unless I think currently there's no questions. So I will move on to activations. So the purpose of activations is to export your data, your audience data, as you know, Excel sheets, CSV files, and things like that. I think in my most recent roundtable with everyone, that is something that currently we cannot directly export the file. So Regional is working on something. We have made a breakthrough yesterday, but I think it's a bit too early to kind of share where that is going, because we still need some validation on GMDT side. But there is progress since the last roundtable. But I want to show you how this works because the workflow may potentially involve setting it up here. Okay, so let's use the test campaign again, the test project. So let's say I create something new. There are multiple options, but for the most part, I think all of us will be using file export. And we should be, at least during the formal training, we should be exporting to Google Cloud Storage. Okay, next. So if this is connected to a journey, you should check this, but I think for now, we won't have any use cases like this. And then you need to build your segment before you come to this, right? So if there's data that you want to export, for example, maybe people who have made bookings in the last 14 days, but maybe didn't book a transfer. So that could be something that you download and share with your contact center teams, right? So that is something you have to pre-build, and then you choose it from here, and then we start. Okay, so I'm just going to pick something random because I'm not going to launch this anyway. So this is just a segmentation I built to compare direct versus indirect clients. Okay, there's this thing called target limit. Typically, we don't use this because we want to export the entire list, but the use of this function is, for example, maybe you want to have a maximum size of your list that you're exporting. Maybe there is 1 million people on the list, but you only want, I don't know, the first 1,000 people. So you can either have a random selection out of the whole list or specific order. So maybe from top to bottom or from earliest creation to latest creation, something like that. But generally, I think no one will really use this function. Okay, then we move to configuration. You can name your export file name. So that's important because what I noticed on Google Cloud Platform is that there is a lot of items there. And it does make it very difficult to find things. So naming it properly, maybe with your name or with your market name and things like that, would make it quicker to look for it. You could even put today's date. Okay, so then things about what formats that you want it to be exported in. I think for most of us, we'll be using CSV, header row. So that's going to be like your data table headers, like first name, last name, email addresses, opt-in, yes, no, that kind of stuff. Okay, so what that means is, as I just explained, so you can have like name. Oh, right, because I think okay. So remember earlier I mentioned that when you are using the data tables, I always recommend using clients and prospects as the default. And this is the reason why. Because this is actually the bookings data table. It doesn't have first name and last name, which is why it's not very useful for us in CRM. And that's why under segmentation, I think maybe I'll choose the family segment. I think this is done in client and prospect. Data catalog. Yeah, so this is under client and prospects. So I'll be able to find all the names. First name, last name, maybe you want their email addresses if you're exporting this for paid media. Maybe even their phone number, if available. And let's say this is all you need, or if you need more, just add on. Then you just add the selection, and then it chooses the columns for you. So then all you need to do is create an activation, and it gives you the summary. So this is where you're exporting it to. This is the file name, formats, and whatnot, and then the segment that you have chosen. So if you want to push it then to the cloud platform, you can click on execute now, and it pushes it there. I won't click on it now, but it actually maybe what I'll show you is an actual one that I've pushed. It will look like this. So this is how many times you have pushed it. So I pushed it twice, and the number of records are different because I pushed it at 2 different periods. Okay. Yeah. Actually, that's all you need to know. So where we are stuck here, in terms of how we are trying to figure out how we're going to pull the data, we are stuck because once it's been pushed to Google Cloud Platform, we don't know where it goes. We can't find it. So that is something that we might have found an answer, but we're waiting for GMDT to validate. Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to cover on Imagino, and it gives us about 20 minutes for Q&A if you guys have anything. Yeah, so I see that Hui has already dropped a couple of questions. Is there any best practice for audience size? Frankly, not really, because it depends on your campaign type. So like if for example, with the Bali fire incident last week, you want to blast it to everyone who has booked Bali. But that number may be different if you're trying to target like a different resort booking and things like that. So it really depends on what you are trying to achieve.
Sam,
Hmm.
actually to add on this question is because previously in my previous company, if we actually didn't cap the size per campaign, so it may harm our, the spam email from the Postmaster Google account. So therefore, that's the reason that I've checked. Do we need to actually cap the audience size per campaign? Means it can be in the same email, but we can actually send it batch by batch.
Okay, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So far we have not hit any limits, at least not like anything that other BUs have reported as well. I believe many of our limits are like in the tens of thousands, so we should be okay from that perspective.
Okay.
Yeah. If it does fail to deliver, you will actually get in the campaign report, you should be able to see that as well.
Okay.
Okay. Second question, do we have any monthly caps? So as far as I know, there isn't really a quota in terms of how many we can blast out because we're paying for a fixed annual subscription via GMDT. Okay. Do we need to suppress the database from time to time? Hui, what do you mean by this?
I think you already answered because if we do not have a monthly cap, meaning we don't need to suppress the data. Because sometimes it could be a quotation, there's a quota for when the GMDT that sign up for this entire package. And then sometimes we have to suppress the those database that is not engaged. I
Okay.
have experienced that in my previous CRM platform. So that's why I
Okay.
just double check. Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, as I said earlier, at this point we've not run into any caps. But if anyone runs into it, please let me know. Um, Technically, it's a good thing because we then have a lot of GMs that we are reaching a cap. So yeah, it's kind of like a good problem to have. But please let me know if we ever have that issue. Okay. Any other questions? I think everyone is like very overwhelmed. There is a lot of information that I've just imparted to you. Yeah, so if you have more questions later as you play around the platforms, or if you have any feedback, please let me know. This is a work in progress. So as I'm working with the various teams now, we are also learning different things about the platform, like, oh, how come, the formatting doesn't work in this module, but it works on a different module? So things like that, we will learn together, and then we will, of course, share it with the wider community. I see, Nikki, I think you have dropped a question on personalization. So you try to add your first name into the email. Yeah. And then it gets masked. Okay. Okay. It looks like you kind of have two parts. So first part is yes, actually from what I saw just now, frankly that's kind of the first time I was seeing that preview. It does appear that our names are masked. I suppose for data privacy because we're not just viewing our names, we're also viewing like thousands of our clients' names, right? So that is one safety measure that they've implemented. The second part is that the GM numbers for us can't be found. So as staff, we technically don't have any loyalty points. So it should typically show up as null because it's our own profile.
Yeah, hi Sam. Yes, just to clarify, I sent out a test email to our internal group. Then when we receive our own email, the subject also shows like an XX. Sarah received like SSXX. Is that normal? Because it's these issues, we don't want to send out all the campaign like customer receive that with XX.
Hang on, I mean, that means when you actually launch a test campaign, you are not
Yeah.
seeing a full name. Okay, that's unusual. Thank you for raising that. I need to flag this to GMDT, the technical team, to see if this is actually an issue when it comes to previewing or it is an issue with the live thing. To me, it shouldn't be an issue on the live side, but I will have to double check on this. On the point of our status being null, so that's something that when Singapore and Malaysia launched their first campaign, we also noticed that. Of course, for our own test emails, we will always get null. But we did see like some prospects also coming back with null in their profiles because they're prospects, they don't have a loyalty status. What we are exploring now is to figure out a way to add a dynamic rule into the codes to say that if you detect this as null, just remove this section or show something else that is cleaner. So that's something that we are aware and we are exploring as well.
Okay, thank you so much. And I have one more question is about the pre-reach campaign. So will the Imagino able to collect the pre-reach like records in the future?
So pre-reg campaigns are activated on global level. We don't set them up here. I'm not sure if I'm understanding your context.
Yeah, but for some of our like key sales opening EDMs campaigns, we want to target or others maybe only interested in the Japan ski, or the others only interested in the sun resorts. So when all this kind of data will collect by global. They when they collect the pre-rich records, right? So previously in acoustic, because we are able to like pull out the GM IDs or GM records with different interest and upload into acoustic. But in Imagino, like you said, because of the privacy issues, we can't touch that. So how can we like implement this?
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you are trying to pull out a segment of people who have pre-registered already, right? And then you want to export that list of people for whatever purpose, whether it's for paid media or for targeting them again and things like that. Okay, in theory, it is the data sets behind the scenes is actually the same data as what we are seeing on acoustic. The names may be a bit different, but I'm quite confident that we should be able to recreate it. So that's something that, you know what, let's explore, and then we can rebuild it again.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? It looks like there's nothing. So maybe I will give you back 10 minutes of your time. And if you have anything at all, right? There is no small question here. Like you can just ask me any question about Imagino. Just ping me on the side. I'm happy to answer. Or if you need a more specific, maybe demonstrations on a specific module, let me know. That's something that we can also arrange for one-for-one. So yes, good point on the handbook. I know I've said this in the last week. There is a playbook coming. So a lot of the information I mentioned to you earlier, like for bookings, we have to use the validated resource status. All of those best practices requirements will all go into the playbook, so that everyone doesn't feel so lost. Okay, so I hope that as we move into May, we will all start to use more of Imagino to launch campaigns. Yeah, and let's try and get this on, let's start to get on to Imagino in May, so that we are ready for the end of the Tanyon at the end of in the middle of June. Okay. All right, so thank you so much, everyone. I think that was a very intense session, so we'll keep in touch, and I will send all the relevant information soon. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.